Greetings, Keishlings. Keishan Prime here with my review of Attack on Titan, Chapter 98. What was the title again? I'm stuck with titles. I'm glad. Which I think I actually start to understand what that was all about towards the end of the chapter. I don't always grasp where the titles come from unless it's so obvious during a live reaction. You know how it goes. But, starts off, Reiner's having a strategy meeting with some of the higher-ups, saying the north is their weak spot, seeing as the south is where 32 ships at the wharf had been destroyed and the wharf itself could be gone too. And this whole chapter was just full force Eldian hate, which we kind of get maybe a glimpse of, well, no, we don't really. Not really. Porco mentions the officer's wisdom, and he waits for their plan, which Peck retorts with, yeah, leaving everything to 4 kids. Yeah, that never failed before. Shots fired. She even asks what the future for the Eldians will be, which there's no clear answer to that, especially given some of the things that will be happening, I'm sure, in the future. Falco finally gets a win on Gabby, during a, I don't know what the military term for it is, but it's endurance training when you're carrying your pack and all your equipment, your weapon, and you're just running to build up your endurance. I would think the most logical. But, and obviously that's good for him, but Colt, who was with the Titan Shifter group, who was watching from a balcony above, was like, yeah, that's not going to, undo her ranking. Which then Zeke's like, did you question the honor of a soldier? And he's like, no. And then they go off to play baseball, which is appropriate training, I suppose, for the Beast Titan, which I got into that kind of with my live reaction, so please watch that. But while leaving the training area and the guards are congratulating Falco for the victory, Gabby gets mad, saying it's not that easy to do, to unseat her yet again. Falco finally yells at her why he's doing this in the first place. It's for her sake. He had never once brought this up to her, so it comes as a shock. And the others seemed, I think, to have... I kind of got the impression that they already knew this, so that was interesting. Let's see. Where are my notes? Lose my place. Oh, Yuto, Gabby, and Zofia... Why Zofia? See the stage where the declaration of war will be happening during the festival, and remark that with all the people from these various nations coming together, this is like a good sign of peace. Which we find out that Yuto is not actually Marleyan born, and he came from another country where they had him in an encampment like Marley does for Eldians, and that there's a deeper hatred towards the Eldians from all the other nations. Marley, for some reason, is less that, given that they actually weaponize the Eldians. Maybe that's why. Oh, we'll make a little peace with them while we make them weapons of war. I don't really know otherwise. But yeah, and this whole invite is kind of a disgrace to them. And then we move on. You got upon leaving where they were, Gabby notices McGrath and Lord Tiber, William Tiber, talking. And at first I was like, it just seemed like a event planning for the festival and everything, and home remodeling, but I'm thinking that it's all just kind of code, and really not nuance, but I'm not sure the word I'm trying to come up with, but McGrath hands off a black book, and Tiber looks at it and then hands it off to someone else, and I was like, okay, this is definitely more than just what it looks like on the surface. Because McGrath talked about like his home having to be demolished to be reconstructed, or having like the remodeling done and all that kind of stuff, I'm thinking that's like a metaphor for government reconstruction, because he mentions that like a few pillars were still able to be used, but then it's like, oh, that'll welcome in infestation of mice, which I take as a bad thing, even in the analogy for government. So it's like, we get rid of everybody, start anew, and then we're strong again, is what I'm thinking. And I'm pretty sure that's going to get very messy. We might Red Wedding, anybody? We find out that basically this whole chapter takes place about a month since the previous one. Falco has been helping Mr. Kruger, Aaron, deliver letters to and fro from his family. And he eventually tells Falco that he'll be going home after the festival. Also, kind of a thing that totally went over my head. I was like, I know these names. I remember these moments, but why can't I connect the dots? Aaron was literally sitting by his grandfather, Dr. Yeager. Yeah. And it just went over my head. And he speaks of Falco's uncle being a restorationist leader, and that like the whole family would have been sent off to paradise for banishment had they not like dedicated their lives to the military. And that piece further concreted with Colt's status as the heir for the Beast Titan, which Falco wants to even further that piece in the Grease family by becoming the Armor Titan's heir. But we know that I guess I could see it happening, but you know, even he mentions that he can't do it right now. But also Aaron brings up Dr. Yeager mentions that it's like, if you're well enough, it's time to return to your families, regardless, you know, before it's too late, so you don't have any regrets, that kind of thing. And he's like, oh, do you have regrets, Doctor? And he mentions he forcing his son into becoming a doctor, and the whole, how that kind of was spurred by his son and daughter going outside the wall, which led to his daughter's death. And I was like, I remember all this. Why couldn't I remember the connection there? But I finally did. And he has a mental breakdown because he does have those regrets. And that's just not a yippee skippy moment. Because another doctor and a nurse who, I don't even know why he's still employed as a doctor at that hospital. But they like had to take him away. Like he's not supposed to do this kind of stuff with the patients or something. Whatever. Anyway, then you have like the festival eve, let's say. There's like a banquet. You have our four main characters, wannabe warriors. They're going to be waiters and waitresses for the banquet, and you know, they're like, oh, there's so many people around, but we got to make sure, you know, that we do everything right. We got to do all the errands, make sure those wine glasses are filled. And they go out and do their various tasks, and Yudo accidentally spills some wine on a visiting, I would assume dignitary, but she could have been anything. She was Asian, as it was actually noted. Which, you know, on the island, I mentioned in my live reaction that, Asian was not a common nationality. And then I was like, wait, they're not on the island anymore, so why would that be as much of an issue? Unless maybe Asian races or ethnic groups are even still a minority, in the expanded world that we now view. And he was like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, be careful. And he's like, but your clothes, I'm so sorry. And then some guy comes up and is like, madam, what's the matter? And she did not actually, what's the term? Rat him out. Yes. And she was, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I accidentally spilled this wine and he was helping me and all that stuff. And, and it's like, oh, what a shame. And, he leads her away. And he's like, why did you help me? And because she knew what would happen to him. And then the others convene and she's like, she helped me. And they realize that she knew he was an Eldian and that she was from High Zul, motherfucker, Zul, from Asia, which I've never heard of that. Is that an actual place? But, anyway, you have Tybur. He finally makes his appearance. He's talking to some of the ambassadors from various countries. I'm not sure where Nabia is. That's probably just a made-up name, unless I'm wrong again. I don't know. It's probably made up, as all the places in this world are. But I'm wondering if it has like a real world, considering their dark complexion, somewhere in Africa maybe, or like somewhere maybe near I'm not sure, the Arabian Peninsula, or maybe towards India, somewhere around there. I'm not sure. And it's like old friends with these. They're talking about, it's like, oh, you remember this, Willie? It's like when you fell out of that tree. More like he's the one that fell out of that tree, because he's the one with the scar. Willie ain't gonna have no problem with scars, Titan healing powers. And Gabby remembers him from that meeting with Magath, and it's like he was speaking with the commander that time. And then you have the foreign ambassador. He's like, thank you for coming. And it's like, I'm the foreign ambassador. And it's like, I know we've had a lot of problems with wars, obtaining natural resources and all. And that yesterday's curse is also today's curse. And, oh, sorry, yesterday's curse is today's friend. Old enemies make new friends, right? The world has shown that in real life many times before, and hopefully continues on. But, and he's like, you've drunk on our finest food and wine, so, let's just flush all the old events down the toilet. And it's like, to long-lasting peace, and Tybur's like, okay, it's time for you to get off the stage. He didn't actually say it. He said it in a nice way, but that's what he meant. And then everyone was up in cheers. So they really didn't care at all for that ambassador's speech. And he mentions that they're in the internment zone right now, and it's the nest of the devils, and that have come to destroy the world, and they've slaughtered many nations, and they're descendants of the devil who dragged our world into hell, and even though they are of my same blood, it's that Marley was the most mistreated by the devils, apparently, which doesn't make a lot of sense, because then why would they be? It kind of makes sense that, they were the most mistreated, and they would then weaponize their enemy. But then why does everyone else have like this darker hatred for them? Wouldn't they be weaponizing them too? It was, when I started thinking about it, it made no sense. And he wants the tragedy to stop repeating. And this will all come true, which the sentiment is that, eradicate all the Eldians and peace will be had. But he's like, I have one solution to this never-ending problem, and it will be announced on the stage tomorrow. To the great writers and witnesses of history. And the four kids are just like, what are we witnessing? And next morning, it's Gabby. She wakes up all disgruntled because she hears things. There was a festival everything's been set up in the internment zone. Never happened before. They're all like, "What the hell's going on?" And the others show up and they're like, "Harry, here's something," and Falco just shoves it in her mouth. They're like, "Hey, we're having fun. Let's have fun. It's a festival." And even Reiner gets in on it. He starts just feeding them 3 panels of buying them shit. And they're eating it until eventually Gabby has to be dragged by Reiner. Probably the funniest scene in the whole chapter. And it was like, "You were too greedy. But it hurts, and it was so good. I wish festivals were every day." And he's like, Then we finally have everyone setting up for the declaration and everything, and you got people all sitting, and you have all the Titan shifters there, the possible candidates, and excuse me. Falco directs Reiner's attention away, and Zeke's like, "It's okay, Reiner, go ahead, we got time." And he leads him to this like underground cellar or something, and we find out the thing that I was spoiled by is that Mr. Kruger is actually Eren. And it's like, "It's been 5 years, huh, Reiner?" "Eren? I'm glad." And yeah, so yeah, he was glad to see someone he considered a friend at one time, and then now who is an enemy, but might become a friend, an ally again. He was happy that he could return to his homeland. And that was about the chapter. I mean, it was okay. I gave it like a 3. Because I was spoiled, you know, being spoiled always dampers things. I'll bump it up to a 3.5. It had some things, and once I really started comprehending what that like secret double talk kind of stuff was, it made it more interesting. But overall, that's about what I thought of the chapter for this month. See you next time. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Keishlings, roll out.